We are handed a script early in life. You keep your head down, you work your hours, you pay your taxes, you abide by the laws of the state. In exchange, society agrees to protect you. It is a clean transaction. It makes sense. Until the machinery breaks. You file a grievance because a manager crossed a line. You sit in a bright office, handing over the printed emails. The HR representative nods, takes notes, and assures you the company takes the matter seriously. 2 weeks later, you are reassigned. The manager gets a promotion. The department exists to protect the company, not the employee. Or you take a dispute to court. You hire a lawyer. You pay the filing fees. You wait 14 months for a hearing. When you finally sit before a judge, the opposing side, backed by a corporate firm, files 3 new motions to delay the process. Justice has a price tag. It prices out the victim and subsidizes the well-connected. The rules apply to you. The exceptions apply to them. Half a century ago, Mario Puzo mapped out this exact paradox in the opening of The Godfather. He bypassed the mobsters. He ignored the shootouts. He started with a man who played by the rules. Amerigo Bonasera is an undertaker. He spends his life preparing bodies for burial. He operates a steady business. He raised a family. When he arrived in America, he made a conscious decision. He would not rely on the old neighborhood networks. He would not ask favors from the men who operated outside the law. He wanted to be a real American. He trusted the police. He trusted the courts. His daughter started dating a young man from a wealthy, politically connected family. One evening, the boy and a friend took her out for a drive. They parked the car. They demanded things she refused to give. She fought back. They retaliated. They beat her with their fists. They broke her jaw in 2 places. They shattered her nose. When Bonasera arrived at the hospital, his daughter was heavily medicated. Her face was swollen beyond recognition. Her mouth was wired shut. Bonasera did not track the boys down. He did not buy a weapon. He went to the precinct. He provided the names. He gave the detectives the hospital reports. He sat in the waiting room while the police brought the 2 young men into custody. He operated exactly as the social contract dictates. Months later, Bonasera sits in a courtroom. He wears his best dark suit. His wife sits beside him. They wait for the system to fulfill its obligation. The trial concludes. The judge adjusts his glasses and reads the sentence. 3 years in prison. Bonasera nods. Then the judge continues reading. He cites the boys' clean records. He mentions their youth. He notes they come from good, respectable families. The judge suspends the sentence. The boys will not spend an hour in a cell. The gavel hits the block. The court is adjourned. Bonasera sits on the wooden bench. He watches the 2 boys walk toward the aisle. Their parents pat them on the shoulders. One of the boys glances back at the undertaker. The boy smiles. Bonasera does not yell. He does not weep. He stares at the exit. He weighs his decades of paying taxes, voting in local elections, and obeying city ordinances. He built a quiet, compliant life. None of it purchased an ounce of dignity. The court was not broken. The court functioned exactly as designed. The judge weighed the future of 2 wealthy college students against the broken jaw of an undertaker's daughter, and the calculation was simple. The rules Bonasera followed all his life were management tools. They kept men like him in line, while men with influence negotiated their own terms. He watches the bailiff sort files. He watches the court reporter pack away her machine. The room empties. His wife holds a handkerchief over her mouth. Her shoulders shake. He turns to his wife. He says, "For justice, we must go to Don Corleone." Outside the room, a wedding is taking place. Hundreds of guests eat, drink, and dance. The undertaker has walked away from the sunlight down a quiet, dimly lit hallway. He stops. He raises his hand. He knocks on the heavy wooden door. The door closes. The accordion music from the garden becomes a muffled hum. Don Vito Corleone sits behind a wide oak desk. He wears a tuxedo with a red rose pinned to the lapel. He sits perfectly still. He listens. Bonasera finishes his story. He reaches inside his heavy coat. He pulls out a thick envelope. He sets it on the desk. He asks Corleone to kill the 2 young men who assaulted his daughter. He states he will pay any price. Corleone does not look at the envelope. He leans back in his leather chair. He asks a question. Why did Bonasera go to the police first? Bonasera stammers. He explains he wanted to be a good citizen. He wanted to follow the law. Corleone outlines the history between them. Bonasera's wife is godmother to Corleone's child. They are connected. Yet Bonasera has not invited him over for coffee in years. He never visited. He never called him Godfather. He kept his distance. He wanted no part of Corleone's world. He relied on the courts. He relied on the state. Only now, when the state has failed him, does he come into this room and try to buy a murder with cash. Corleone speaks quietly. He asks what he has done to make Bonasera treat him with such disrespect. If Bonasera had come to him in friendship, the men who hurt his daughter would be suffering this very day. If an honest man like Bonasera had enemies, they would become Corleone's enemies. And then, they would fear him. Corleone is not offended by the request. He is offended by the envelope. Cash is a clean transaction. A customer pays a fee, the service is rendered, the ledger goes to zero, and the relationship ends. That is how the formal economy operates. Corleone operates a parallel system. He trades in a different currency. By rejecting the money, he dictates the rules of his network. If he takes the envelope, he is a hired gun. If he refuses the money and grants a favor, he creates an open-ended debt. He demands an obligation. He wants the undertaker to owe him a service, payable at a time of Corleone's choosing. Bonasera is an undertaker. Someday, Corleone might need a quiet room. He might need a casket no one will inspect. A cash payment limits their transaction to this afternoon. A debt guarantees the future. Bonasera looks at the envelope. He looks at the man behind the desk. He understands the price of admission. He bows his head. He steps forward. He takes Corleone's hand and kisses the ring on his finger. "Be my friend," Bonasera says. "Godfather." Corleone nods. He places his hands on the desk. He agrees to handle the problem, but he makes a correction. The boys will not be killed. Bonasera's daughter is alive. Death would be disproportionate. The boys will suffer the exact physical damage they inflicted. The ledger will be balanced, not tipped. He dismisses the undertaker. The study door opens and closes all afternoon. A famous singer sits in the chair opposite the desk. Johnny Fontaine is Corleone's godson. He wears a custom suit, but he looks exhausted. His career is declining. His records aren't selling. His voice is weak from heavy drinking. A major Hollywood studio is producing a war film. The lead role fits Fontaine perfectly. It would put him back on top. But the studio head, Jack Woltz, refuses to even give him a screen test. Fontaine complains. He says Woltz hates him. Fontaine seduced a young actress Woltz was grooming for stardom, and Woltz never forgave him. Fontaine's voice cracks. He covers his face and begins to cry. Corleone stands up. He walks around the desk. He grabs Fontaine by the shoulders. He slaps the singer across the face. He tells him to stop crying. He tells him to act like a man. Fontaine quiets down. He rubs his cheek. He says Woltz is too powerful. The studio boss owns politicians. He has connections with the FBI director. He will not change his mind. Corleone pours a glass of anisette. He hands it to his godson. "I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse." Corleone sends his lawyer, Tom Hagen, to Los Angeles. Hagen is not a mobster. He is a quiet, educated man with a briefcase. He requests a meeting with Jack Woltz. Woltz lives on a sprawling estate. He collects art. He hosts senators. His prized possession is a champion English racehorse named Khartoum. Woltz purchased the animal for $600,000. He houses the horse in a state-of-the-art stable, guarded by private security. He gives Hagen a tour of the property and shows off the animal. Woltz invites the lawyer to dinner. At the table, Hagen brings up the contract. He offers Woltz a solution to his labor union problems in exchange for casting Fontaine. Woltz shouts. He bangs his fist on the table. He refuses. He insults Fontaine. He insults Corleone. He says Fontaine will never work in his town. He tells Hagen to leave his house and never come back. Hagen does not argue. He does not raise his voice. He wipes his mouth with a linen napkin. He says his employer insists on hearing bad news immediately. He thanks Woltz for the dinner. He leaves. Morning breaks over the California estate. The mansion is quiet. The security guards patrol the grounds. The stable doors are locked. Woltz sleeps in his master bedroom. He shifts on the mattress. He feels something damp near his feet. He opens his eyes. The room is dim. He sits up. He reaches down and pulls back the silk bedsheets. Resting on the mattress, pooling blood onto the fine fabric, is the severed head of his racehorse. A meeting is arranged. A new player sits across the desk in the Corleone study. He is known as the narcotrafficker. He is a quiet, precise man. The Second World War is over. The economy is shifting. The old men in the neighborhood still make their money from illegal gambling, union dues, and protection rackets. The narcotrafficker sees the future. He has built a supply chain stretching from the poppy fields of Turkey to the laboratories of Sicily. He wants to open a new market in New York. He has the product, he has the distributors, he has the capital, he lacks one asset. He needs a political shield. The narcotrafficker lays out the terms. Moving drugs on a massive scale attracts heavy law enforcement. It attracts federal agents. He knows Corleone spent decades building an invisible infrastructure. Corleone controls judges, district attorneys, and police captains. The narcotrafficker offers a partnership. If Corleone uses his political network to protect the drug shipments from the courts, he will receive 30% of the profits. It is a staggering sum. A return on investment that eclipses all of Corleone's legitimate and illegitimate businesses combined. Corleone pours the man a drink. He asks a few questions about the operation. He listens. Then he says no. Corleone does not reject the deal out of morality. He rejects it out of pragmatism. He explains the mechanics of his political influence. The politicians and judges on his payroll are practical men. They accept bribes to ignore a rigged card game or look the other way on a union dispute. They view these as harmless vices. They can justify the corruption to themselves and their constituents. Drugs alter the equation. Heroin destroys neighborhoods. The public backlash is severe. If Corleone attaches his name to narcotics, his political friends will face pressure from the press and the federal government. They will stop answering his phone calls. The judges will sign warrants. The police will conduct raids. The political shield will evaporate. Taking the money means trading a sustainable, protected empire for a fast payout that ends in prison. Corleone declines the offer. He wishes the narcotrafficker luck in his other ventures. The meeting is over. Then the hot-headed brother speaks. Sonny is the eldest son. He sits in the corner of the room. He leans forward. He looks at the narcotrafficker. He asks a question about the cash guarantee on the initial investment. He shows eagerness. Corleone turns his head. He looks at his son. He does not yell. He does not scold him. The look is enough. Sonny stops talking and leans back in his chair. Corleone turns back to the guest, apologizes for his son's interruption, and ends the meeting. The narcotrafficker shakes Corleone's hand. He walks out of the study. The door clicks shut. Corleone looks at his eldest son. He delivers a single rule of negotiation. Never tell anyone outside the family what you are thinking. The instruction is correct. The timing is too late. The narcotrafficker did not just hear a question. He saw a wedge. He did the math. The Godfather is a conservative man protecting his political assets. The hot-headed brother is hungry for the new economy. The Godfather is the only barrier to a multi-million-dollar industry. If the Godfather dies, the brother takes over. If the brother takes over, the drug deal happens. Winter arrives in New York. The streets are gray. Ice lines the gutters. Corleone finishes his workday at his olive oil importing company. His usual driver is out sick. His middle son, Fredo, waits behind the wheel of the parked Buick. Corleone steps out of the office building. He tells Fredo to wait. He walks across the busy avenue toward a corner market. He approaches a fruit stand set up on the sidewalk. He inspects the produce. He selects a few oranges. He pulls a few coins from his pocket and hands them to the vendor. Two men step out from the shadows of an alleyway. They wear heavy black overcoats. They pull their hats down low. They walk fast, cutting through the pedestrians. They do not look at the storefronts. They look at Corleone. Corleone turns. He sees them. He drops the bag of fruit. He moves toward the parked car. He moves fast for an older man. The men draw their weapons. 5 shots ring out in the cold air. The bullets strike Corleone in the back. He stumbles. He hits the hood of the car. He slides down the metal grill and collapses onto the wet pavement. The oranges roll into the street. The 2 men put their guns in their pockets. They disappear into the panicked crowd. Frito sits in the driver's seat. He fumbles with his own weapon. He drops it on the floorboard. He steps out of the car, looks at his father on the ground, and sits on the curb. He puts his head in his hands. Miles away, the war hero's son walks out of a movie theater. Michael wears a thick wool coat. His girlfriend walks beside him. He is the youngest son. He holds a college degree. He enlisted in the Marines after Pearl Harbor. He fought in the Pacific. He wears medals. He spent his entire adult life building a wall between himself and the men who visit his father's study. He chose the legitimate world. He chose the rules, the laws, and the institutions. They walk toward a subway entrance. They pass a corner newsstand. Michael stops. He looks down at the evening edition. The paper is fresh off the press. The headline is printed in thick black ink. He stares at the photograph of the street, the abandoned car, and the police tape. The system he believed in just failed his father. He picks up the newspaper. The war hero's son drives to the hospital late at night. The streets are empty. He parks his car. He walks through the glass doors. The reception desk is vacant. The lobby is empty. He walks down the corridor toward his father's room. He expects to see the private detectives hired by his family. He expects to see the NYPD detail assigned to guard a high-profile shooting victim. There is no one. The hallway echoes with his footsteps. He checks the stairwell. He checks the nurse's station. The ward is cleared. This does not happen by administrative error. The police do not abandon a post unless they receive an order from the top. The narco-trafficker paid the right people to empty the building. The hospital is a vacuum, waiting for the hitmen to arrive and finish the job. Michael walks into his father's room. Corleone is asleep, connected to IV bags and monitors. Michael does not run to a phone. He does not call the precinct. The precinct is the problem. He unplugs the monitors. He unhooks the rolling stands. He pushes his father's heavy metal bed out of the room, down the corridor, and into an empty ward at the far end of the floor. He locks the door. He goes back down to the lobby. The front doors open. A young man walks in holding a bouquet of flowers. It is Enzo, a local baker. The Godfather helped Enzo immigrate and avoid deportation years ago. The baker owes the family a debt. He came to pay his respects. Michael tells him to leave. There is trouble coming. Enzo refuses. He says he wants to help. Michael assesses the baker. He tells Enzo to throw the flowers in the trash. He walks him outside to the front steps of the hospital. The winter air is freezing. The street is dead quiet. Michael gives the baker a set of instructions. Button your coat. Pop your collar to hide your face. Shove your hand deep into your pocket. Point your finger through the fabric. Stand completely still. Look like a man holding a weapon. Look like a man waiting for a fight. They stand on the stone steps under the dull yellow light of a street lamp. Enzo is trembling. He pulls a cigarette from his pocket and places it between his lips. He tries to light it, but his hands shake violently. The lighter slips from his fingers. Michael picks up the silver lighter. He sparks the flint. He holds the flame to the cigarette. Michael looks at his own hands. They are perfectly steady. A black sedan turns the corner. It crawls down the avenue. It has no headlights on. The tires crunch over the icy asphalt. The car slows to a halt in front of the hospital. The windows are rolled down. Inside, 3 men peer out at the entrance. They look at the 2 men standing on the steps. They see the heavy coats. They see the hands dug into the pockets. The driver keeps his foot on the brake. The exhaust billows into the freezing air. 10 seconds pass. The driver hits the gas. The sedan speeds off, disappearing into the dark. Michael watches the tail lights fade. He defeated a car full of armed professionals with a baker and a bluff. 5 minutes later, sirens cut through the neighborhood. Police cruisers skid onto the curb in front of the hospital. Doors fly open. A dozen uniformed officers step out. A large man in a heavy coat walks up the steps. This is the corrupt Captain McCluskey. He is a high-ranking officer in the NYPD. He looks at Michael. He looks at the baker. McCluskey is furious. He did not clear this sector for 2 guards to be standing at the front door. He asks where the private detectives are. Michael answers that the police pulled them off the detail. McCluskey points at Enzo. He orders 2 officers to arrest him. They grab the baker and drag him down the steps. The captain turns to Michael. He orders him to leave the premises. Michael does not move. He keeps his hands in his pockets. He looks at the commanding officer of the precinct. "How much did they pay you?" Michael asks. "How much did the narco-trafficker pay you to set up my father?" McCluskey's face tightens. He steps forward. He grabs Michael by the lapels of his coat, pulling him close. Then he draws back his right fist. He drives his knuckles directly into Michael's face. The bone shatters. The impact drops Michael to the pavement. Uniformed officers pin his arms behind his back. The captain stands over him, adjusting his coat. Michael lies on the freezing concrete. The left side of his face swells instantly. He tastes copper. He does not struggle against the officers holding his arms. He breathes through his nose. He turns his head and wipes the blood from his mouth. He looks up at the gold shield pinned to the captain's coat. He realizes a badge is just a piece of stamped metal. The social contract is an illusion. Violence and leverage are the true laws of the city. The gates of the Corleone compound are chained shut. Armed men walk the perimeter of the Long Beach estate. Inside the dining room, the family gathers to assess the damage. The hot-headed brother paces the floor. He wants raw force. He wants to hit the narco-trafficker's lieutenants, attack his supply lines, and shoot his men in the streets. Tom Hagen, the lawyer, advises caution. The narco-trafficker has proposed a peace meeting. He wants to negotiate directly with Michael. He assumes the civilian son, the war hero with no criminal record, will be reasonable. He assumes Michael is weak. Michael sits at the table. His jaw is wired shut. The skin across his cheekbone is purple and swollen. He does not raise his voice. He proposes a different strategy. He will go to the meeting, and he will kill them both. Sonny laughs. Hagen shakes his head. "You do not shoot a police captain. It is the oldest rule in the American syndicate. If you kill a cop, every officer in the city stops taking bribes. They kick in doors. They shut down the gambling rings, the docks, and the unions. The business bleeds to death under the pressure of the state." Michael speaks slowly through his wired jaw. He approaches the problem clinically. He strips away the badge and looks at the mechanics of the man. McCluskey is a heavy earner for the drug trade. He operates as muscle. He protects shipments. "He's not a cop," Michael says. "He's a corrupt hitman holding a badge." Michael outlines a media strategy. The family pays journalists at the major dailies. He tells Hagen to draft a narrative. When the captain dies, the newspaper reporters will receive tips about his offshore bank accounts. They will publish stories detailing his ties to the narcotics trade. It is information warfare. The public does not mourn a corrupt cop. They do not demand justice for a man who took bribes from heroin dealers. The police department will not start a war over a dirty officer. They will distance themselves to avoid the scandal. The PR campaign will sanitize the execution. The room goes quiet. The family accepts the plan. A senior capo named Clemenza prepares the weapon. He takes a .38 caliber revolver and wraps the grip in black tape to prevent fingerprints. He gives Michael a set of instructions. Do not hesitate. Shoot them both in the head. Do not hold the gun up when you finish. Let it drop to your side. Open your fingers and let it fall to the floor. Turn around and walk out. The meeting is set at a small, family-owned Italian restaurant in the Bronx. The family gets a tip on the location hours before. Clemenza drives there, pries the lid off the toilet tank in the men's room, and tapes the gun behind the porcelain. Night falls. Michael rides in the back of the narcotrafficker's car. The captain sits in the front. They pull up to the restaurant. It is empty except for the owners. They sit at a corner table covered in a white cloth. The waiter brings a bottle of wine and plates of veal. The narcotrafficker leans across the table. He speaks in rapid, tight Sicilian. He explains his position. He says the assassination attempt on the Godfather was strictly business. He wants peace. He wants the political protection he originally asked for. Michael nods. He asks permission to use the bathroom. The captain stands up. He pats Michael down, checking his waist, his chest, and his ankles. He finds nothing. He waves him toward the back. Michael walks into the small, tiled bathroom. He shuts the door. He turns on the sink. He reaches behind the toilet tank. His fingers brush the cold tape. He rips the gun free. He checks the cylinder. He shoves the weapon into his waistband and buttons his jacket. He opens the door. He walks back into the dining room. The narcotrafficker looks up from his plate. He starts speaking again, his hands resting on the table. Michael does not sit down. He draws the revolver. He points it at the narcotrafficker's forehead and pulls the trigger. The man's head snaps back. He slumps into his chair. The captain freezes. He stares at the gun. A piece of veal is still resting on his fork. He does not reach for his holster. He does not speak. He just stares. Michael aims. He shoots the captain in the throat. The man chokes, gripping the white tablecloth. Michael steps closer and shoots him in the skull. The captain collapses forward. Plates shatter. Wine spills across the floor, mixing with the blood. Michael stands over the table. He lowers his arm to his side. He opens his fingers. The heavy revolver drops. It clatters on the tile floor. He turns and walks out the front door into the freezing night. A car waits at the corner. The engine is running. He gets in. They drive out of the city. They bypass the bridges and head straight for the Brooklyn docks. The water is black. A cargo freighter sits at the pier, its engines humming. The crew prepares for departure. Michael steps out of the car. He pulls his coat tight against the wind. He walks up the metal gangplank. He boards the freighter bound for exile in Sicily. Michael walks the dirt roads of Sicily. 2 armed men flank him. He wears a flat cap and loose clothing. He is thousands of miles from the streets of New York, hiding in the ancestral town of Corleone. He meets a local woman named Apollonia. They marry. They live in an isolated villa behind stone walls. Michael begins to relax. He teaches his new wife how to drive his Alfa Romeo on the property. One morning they prepare to leave for town. Michael walks out the front door. Apollonia runs ahead of him. She gets into the driver's seat. She smiles at him through the windshield. She turns the ignition key. The car detonates. The blast shatters the windows of the villa. A shockwave knocks Michael to the dirt. Metal, glass, and rock rain down on the driveway. Michael pushes himself off the ground. He watches the wreckage burn. His enemies did not need to cross the ocean to find him. They bought the local guards. Distance provides zero security. Nowhere is safe. In New York, the family business is bleeding. With his father recovering and his brother in hiding, the hot-headed brother takes command. Sonny operates on pure aggression. He orders drive-by shootings on rival captains. He bombs illegal betting parlors. He fights a war of attrition, answering every slight with maximum violence. The rival bosses study his behavior. They look past the gunfire. They look for a structural weakness. They find his temper. Sonny's sister, Connie, lives in a city apartment with her husband, Carlo. Carlo feels sidelined by the Corleone family. He resents his brother-in-law. The rival families recognize the friction. They place Carlo on their payroll. The trap is built on simple mechanics. Carlo comes home. He starts an argument over a phone call. He takes off his leather belt. He strikes his wife. He beats her across the face and shoulders. Connie crawls to the telephone. She dials her family's compound. She asks for Sonny. She cries into the receiver. Sonny stands in the Corleone kitchen. He listens to his sister. He drops the phone. He bypasses the men standing guard at the gates. He does not call for a trailing car. He does not check his weapons. He grabs his keys, gets into his Buick and grinds the gears, speeding down the driveway alone. The route from the compound to the city requires crossing the causeway. The toll plaza acts as a natural bottleneck. Sonny approaches the booths. A black car sits stalled in the lane ahead of him, blocking his path. The toll collector steps out of his booth. He drops a coin on the concrete. He ducks out of sight. Men in heavy overcoats step out from the adjacent toll booths. They carry Thompson submachine guns. They pull the triggers. Heavy caliber rounds shred the Buick. The windshield turns to white dust. The metal doors buckle inward. Sonny pushes his door open. He steps out. The men reload. They fire again. Sonny collapses onto the concrete. The men lower their weapons, walk to their waiting cars, and drive away. The rival bosses did not need a complex infiltration strategy to kill the acting head of the Corleone family. They only needed to agitate him. Anger is a tactical flaw. It bypasses logic. When a man operates on rage, he abandons his defenses. He takes the fastest, most direct route. He moves alone. Anger makes a man predictable. Predictability removes the need for strategy. Predictability gets you dead. Hours later, the police transport the body to the city morgue. Vito Corleone arrives at the building. He is still weak from his own gunshot wounds. He leans heavily on a cane. He walks into the cold tile room. The coroner stands beside a steel table. He unzips the thick black body bag. Corleone looks down. His son's face is destroyed. The torso is torn apart by dozens of bullets. Corleone does not swear revenge. He looks at the attendant. He asks for a telephone. He dials a number. He calls Amerigo Bonacera. The undertaker arrives at the morgue. He stands quietly beside the steel table. Corleone pulls back the sheet. He speaks softly to the undertaker. He states he does not want his wife to see her son in this condition. He asks Bonacera to use all his skills. He asks him to mask the bullet holes, to reconstruct the face, to make the boy presentable. The ledger balances. The debt from the wedding day is collected. Corleone looks at the remains of his eldest son. He swallows his pride. He swallows his grief. He turns to his men and gives a new directive. Arrange a meeting with the heads of the 5 families. He will sue for peace. A long conference table fills the center of a bank boardroom. The air is thick with cigar smoke. The heads of the 5 families sit in heavy leather chairs. Vito Corleone stands at the head of the table. He looks at the men who financed the hitmen, corrupted his police contacts, and murdered his eldest son. He offers peace. He agrees to drop his opposition to the narcotics trade, provided it is kept away from schools and playgrounds. He makes a formal declaration. On the souls of his grandchildren, he will not break the peace. He will not seek vengeance for Sonny's death. It looks like a surrender. It is a calculation. Michael is trapped in Sicily. If the war continues, the rival families will keep sending assassins. The district attorney will keep the murder warrants active. Corleone needs the warrants dropped and the hitmen recalled. He trades his pride and his eldest son's blood for his youngest son's safe return. The men at the table accept the terms. Corleone sits down. He watches them interact. He watches Philip Tartaglia, the boss who supposedly started the war over the drug dispute. Tartaglia is complaining about business territories. He speaks fast. He whines. Then Corleone looks down the table. Emilio Barzini sits quietly. Barzini raises a hand. Tartaglia stops talking immediately. Barzini leans forward and dictates the final terms of the peace treaty. He assigns the territories. He sets the rules. Corleone observes the exchange. He sees the hierarchy. Tartaglia is a front man. Tartaglia does not have the intellect or the capital to orchestrate a city-wide war. Barzini financed the narco-trafficker. Barzini bought the police captain. Barzini manipulated the hot-headed brother's temper. Corleone nods slowly. He files the information away. Months later, Michael returns to New York. The dynamic inside the compound changes. Michael sits behind his father's desk. He wears a tailored suit. His face is slightly asymmetrical, permanently altered by the police captain's punch. His demeanor is rigid. The senior capos, Clemenza and Tessio, stand in the office. They are losing ground to the Barzini family. They want to strike back. They ask for permission to use force. Michael refuses. He tells them to absorb the losses. He tells them the Corleone family is moving its operations to Nevada. Clemenza and Tessio argue. They look past Michael. They look at Vito Corleone, who sits in a chair in the corner of the room. They ask the old man for help. Vito shakes his head. He points at Michael. He says he is retired. Michael is the head of the family now. His decisions are final. The capos leave the room. Michael is colder than his father. He does not negotiate with his lieutenants. He dictates. A year passes. Summer arrives. Vito Corleone walks through his tomato garden. He wears a loose sweater. He carries a glass of red wine. He moves slowly. Michael sits on a wooden bench nearby, watching his father tie the vines to wooden stakes. Vito stops working. He sits beside his son. He pours another glass of wine. He talks about his life. He says he never wanted this trajectory for Michael. He wanted him to hold legitimate power. He wanted him to be a senator or a governor. He switches to business. He analyzes the board. Barzini is moving. Barzini knows Michael is consolidating power to move out west. Barzini will try to eliminate Michael before the transition is complete. Vito outlines the exact mechanics of the upcoming assassination attempt. Barzini will not send men with guns to the compound. He will set a trap. He will arrange a meeting. To guarantee Michael's attendance, Barzini will use an intermediary. He will use someone inside the Corleone family. Someone Michael trusts absolutely. Vito looks at his son. Whoever comes to you with this Barzini meeting, he's the traitor. Michael nods. He does not write it down. He locks it in his mind. A few days later, Vito is back in the garden. He is playing with Michael's young son. The boy runs through the tall tomato plants. Vito picks up an orange. He cuts it into quarters. He carves the rind and shoves the peel into his mouth, making a monster face. He chases his grandson through the dirt. The boy laughs. Vito stops. He coughs. He drops to his knees. He reaches for a wooden stake, but his grip fails. He collapses face first into the dirt. The boy sprays him with a water gun, thinking it is a game. Vito does not move. The architect of the Corleone Empire dies quietly in the soil, miles away from the streets he controlled. Black cars line the paved roads of the cemetery. Hundreds of men in dark suits stand on the grass. The air is cold. Michael stands near the open grave. He watches the casket. A man approaches him. It is Salvatore Tessio. Tessio is one of the original capos. He helped Vito build the family decades ago. He is a trusted, high-ranking lieutenant. Tessio stands beside Michael. He speaks quietly, keeping his eyes on the crowd. He says he spoke with Barzini. He says Barzini wants to arrange a sit-down to clear the air and establish boundaries. Tessio offers his own territory in Brooklyn for the meeting. He guarantees Michael's safety. Michael looks at the casket. He looks at Tessio. Michael stands at the altar of a stone church. He wears a dark suit. He holds a white candle. He is the godfather to his sister's newborn son. The priest stands before him in green vestments, reading from the sacrament. The priest asks Michael a question. Do you renounce Satan? Miles away on the marble steps of a city courthouse, Emilio Barzini walks toward his car. A uniformed police officer approaches him, writing a parking ticket. The officer pulls a revolver from his citation book. He fires twice. Barzini tumbles down the stone steps, dead before he hits the sidewalk. I do renounce him, Michael says. And all his works, the priest asks. A rival boss steps into a revolving door at a luxury hotel. Outside, a man with a shotgun steps out of a sedan. He fires through the glass. The heavy door spins, trapping the shattered body inside. "I do renounce them," Michael says. And all his empty promises. Another boss stands inside an elevator. The brass doors slide open. A man with a submachine gun stands in the corridor. He empties the magazine. "I do renounce them," Michael says. The priest pours holy water over the infant's head. The war is over. In a single afternoon, Michael Corleone eradicates the leadership of the 5 families. But the internal ledger remains open. Salvatore Tessio waits at the compound. He expects to ride with Michael to the Barzini Peace Summit. Instead, 3 capos step into his path. Tom Hagen stands behind them. Tessio looks at the men. He looks at Hagen. He understands the mechanics of his failure. Tessio does not beg. He adjusts his coat. "Tell Mike it was only business," Tessio says. "I always liked him." The capos escort Tessio to a waiting car. He gets in. He does not return. One target remains. Carlo, the brother-in-law, the man who beat his wife to lure the hot-headed brother to the toll booth. Michael sits across from Carlo in the living room. He hands him a plane ticket to Las Vegas. He speaks in a calm, flat voice. He tells Carlo he is out of the family business. He tells him he will not be harmed. He asks a simple question. "Do you think I'd make my sister a widow?" Michael just needs a confession. He needs to know who made the approach. Carlo breaks. He whispers Barzina's name. Michael nods. He tells Carlo to get in the car waiting outside and go to the airport. Carlo picks up his suitcase. He walks out to the driveway. He gets into the passenger seat of the parked car. Clemenza is sitting in the back seat. Clemenza wraps a garrote wire around Carlo's throat and pulls tight. Carlo thrashes. His heavy boots kick the windshield, cracking the glass. Then he stops moving. The compound is quiet. Moving boxes line the hallways. The Corleones are leaving New York. Michael stands in his father's old office. His wife, Kay, stands in the doorway. She just watched her sister-in-law get dragged out of the house, screaming that Michael murdered her husband. Kay looks at Michael. She asks if it is true. Michael tells her not to ask about his business. She asks again. She demands an answer. Michael stares at her. He does not flinch. He delivers a single practiced syllable. "No." Kay exhales. The tension leaves her shoulders. She smiles. She believes the lie because she needs to believe it. She walks out into the living room to pour a drink. She looks back toward the office. Clemenza and 2 other capos walk through the door. They do not look at her. They walk directly to Michael. They take his hand. They kiss his ring. "Don Corleone," Clemenza says. One of the capos walks to the door. He pulls the brass handle. The door clicks into the frame, shutting Kay out. The transition is complete. We are told that playing by the rules guarantees our safety. The Undertaker believed it. The politicians preach it. But when the mechanics of society break down, the official rules offer zero protection. The men who survive operate on a different set of laws. Rule number 1. Never let them know what you are thinking. Sonny Corleone broadcast his anger. He operated on rage. It made him predictable, and predictability got him machine-gunned on a causeway. Michael masked his intentions. He hid his intellect behind a quiet demeanor. He allowed his enemies to believe he was a weak civilian. He used their assumptions as a weapon. Rule number 2. Cultivate leverage, not just capital. Money is a short-term transaction. It buys a service for a day. The Corleones built a parallel state based on debts, favors, and political shields. Cash gets you a seat at the table. Leverage dictates the rules of the game. Rule number 3. Boundaries must be enforced. The institutional rules, the courts, the police, the corporate HR departments operate to protect themselves, not you. When the system fails, your personal boundaries are your only defense. If you cannot enforce them, if you will not exact a proportional cost when they are crossed, they do not exist. The world responds to leverage. It respects consequences. Everything else is just a conversation. Thanks for listening. Watch your perimeter, and we will see you in the next video.